The Phoenix Suns are one win closer in their quest for an NBA championship, winning game one at home against the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll break down the three biggest takeaways from this game. Chris Paul goes off, the rebounding problems, and who was even on the floor coming up on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a contributor at Suns.com and Dime Magazine, and a credentialed media member covering this Suns team for the past 5 seasons. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today. Every day, after every playoff game, after every morning, whatever. I'm here. I'm here for you. So scroll down, hit subscribe, come along on the journey with us. Find us on YouTube. Find us on every single podcast platform. But we have a ton to get to today. Again, the final score 110-99. 1-0 in the series now, with the Suns taking Game one decisively. We have to start with Chris Paul. 19 points in the fourth quarter, 30 overall. We'll get to that in a second. Today's show brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all year long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Chris Paul, 11 points heading into the fourth quarter. It felt like one of those games where Chris was just not even going to bother shooting the ball. But then he had to, because the Pelicans, I believe, cut the lead to 6 or 7, and it had been as high as 23. And they just played really hard in the second half. And what Chris ended up needing to do was get back out there and take the game, grab the game, and win it. But it taught us 3 things. So this is 3 takeaways within a takeaway here. But bear with me. We'll get to the rebounding in the next segment. We'll talk about some of the rotation stuff to close things out. But as it relates directly to Chris Paul, he leaves the game at the 4-minute and 52-second mark of the third quarter. The Pelicans immediately go on a 14-5 run, heading to close that quarter out. So the last 5 minutes basically of that quarter, the Pelicans outscore the Suns by 9 points. Cut it to what did we see? It was an 8-point game heading into the fourth quarter. And that's where we pick up, because the number one thing that Chris Paul performance showed us is that they're going to need it. Because Cameron Payne was 1 of 6. The Suns were outscored by 4 points during his 17 minutes. He did not have the turnover problems that he typically had, but the inefficiency speaks for itself, and he actually had 0 assists. So his stat line tonight was a whopping 2 points and 1 rebound, and he played 17 minutes. It can't happen. We'll talk about the other guards when we talk about the rotation, but every moment that Chris Paul was not on the floor tonight, things got incredibly ugly. And it didn't really rear its head too badly in the first half, because the Pelicans could not buy a shot. They scored 34 points total. But in the second half, when they started to play a little bit better and make some more shots, then when Chris Paul was not out there, it became an emergency. The other thing that this Chris Paul performance showed us is that Chris Paul still has this. He can still do this. I think I had asked Aaron Edwards, who does the show with me once a week, last week when we were kind of talking about what's the expectation level, what's the vibe within the team, within the fan base, etc., as we head into what should be one of the more fun runs in history. And I kind of asked him, like, does the Chris Paul scoring thing, like, do you just think that can snap right back in? And I feel bad even asking the question, because Chris Paul reminded us of it immediately. He not only can make shots, take shots, flip into that aggressive mode. We saw him on switches and on a drop coverage where the big man didn't get in his way and the guard had trouble getting through DeAndre Ayton's screens, whether it was that type of drop or the switch, we saw him just pile on three-pointers. He made a couple over Larry Nance's head. He made a couple in rhythm in that pick and roll situation. But he was getting to the rim. Couple, like 2 or 3 of these shots, maybe even 4 of them were at the rim on layups where the guy like straight up just it didn't expect him to go all the way there because he just does it so rarely, or at least during the regular season, he did it so rarely. And what that all amounts to is that this was a reminder, yes, Chris Paul can do this, and that's a fun thing to just put out there again. But it's also a reminder that, hey, the Suns have another player besides Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton who can attack all types of defensive coverage, because there's a lot of players on this roster who can do a couple things. Cameron Johnson, he can attack a closeout. He can make a three. Mikal Bridges, kind of the same type of guy, and he doesn't always get all the way to the basket like Cam does, but he'll make a mid-range jumper. DeAndre Ayton can get to a hook shot, a running hook shot, a floater, mid-range jumper, but he's not going to beat you off the dribble. Those other guys aren't going to beat you off the dribble. They're not going to be able to attack a switch and isolate and score a basket. They're not necessarily going to be able to dribble drive from all the way out on the top of the key into the basket and make a layup. Chris Paul can. And so he and Devin Booker now become the 1-2 punch that we were used to seeing them be during last year's playoffs that didn't really end up needing to be necessary in the regular season all that much. So he's a guy who, yes, he's reminding us he can do this. He's also reminding us the value of that, of a guy who can just dissect defenses constantly. He said post-game that he heard Willie Green calling out, hey, drop, go under the screen on Chris Paul, and the big man's going to be down there. We're not giving up the mid-range, basically. We're not giving him what he wants. Well, Chris Paul decided, hey, what I actually want now that I heard you say that, is the three. The last part of this Chris Paul performance that really is a takeaway from this game is what it looks like when the Suns have him at full strength from the jump. And maybe you're going to say, okay, does that really matter? Because when it was really needed, Chris Paul did what he needed to do last year, despite the shoulder, despite the COVID, and despite the hand injury, although late in the finals, of course, he was not himself, but I don't think that was the only problem. And that had nothing to do with what happened in the Lakers series at that point. I get that. I get all that. But I do think there's something intangible that can happen in terms of confidence when you have a dominant player from the jump and you're not having to deal with the nerve situation in the shoulder and the neck and whatever it was in the first round last year. And there's also the rest factor. If you're able to make shorter work of your first round opponent, that pays off, especially when you have a team that dealt with injuries by the finals last year, and every team does. So that's the deal. Chris Paul, 30 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds, 3 steals, incredible throwback performance, even to me rivaling the Clippers game, although the stakes weren't as high in this one since it was just the first round instead of the conference finals. But he showed us he can still do this. He showed us how it can help this team dissect and dominate an opponent. And he showed optimism that if this is there from the jump, this run can be even more dominant than last year's was. We'll get into the rebounding, which was clearly the other big story. The Pelicans out-rebounding the Suns by 20 points in this game. I'll tell you why, what matters, what doesn't matter, why it may not affect the rest of this series all that much. But first, guys, today's show brought to you by Athletic Greens. I have been chugging their latest AG1 product, and I've been feeling the results immediately. I don't have time or money or energy or knowledge to pick and choose a million different vitamins and pills and minerals and this and that and this supplement and that supplement. But AG1 gets me everything that I need for better gut health, more energy, an optimized immune system, and more with 1 bottle per day. It's just 1 scoop of AG1 in a bottle of water. Pick the amount. I usually do 12, 16 ounces. Shake it up, dissolve it, and then power it down. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. Those words are much easier to digest and have work on you than they are to pronounce. I can promise you that. Athletic Greens is also a climate-neutral certified company, which is a very big deal to me, and I'm sure many of you. AG purchased carbon credits that support projects protecting old-growth rainforests. For every purchase, they donate to organizations helping to get nutritious food to kids in need. And in 2020, Athletic Greens donated over 1.2 million meals to kids who needed it during the pandemic. Big, big stuff that you can support when you support Athletic Greens, when you support our show, and when you help yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. One scoop, 1 cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements, just to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutrition insurance. Today's show, guys, also brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar out there. My favorite protein bar, and the protein bar that allows me to stick with what I know, what I love. It's not outside of my comfort zone. I think that's what you guys will love about it as well. There's a lot of protein bars where you find them on a shelf and you're like, I don't love that flavor, or this tastes really fake, but I know it's good for me. I'll take a bite. I'll do whatever. But Built Bar is delicious. Built Bar is delicious. They have a flavor for everybody, whether you, like me, are more of the rich chocolate type, peanut butter brownie, mint brownie, double chocolate, or you're something on the lighter side. You like the raspberry, you like the coconut, something a little bit lighter, but each and every single one will be covered in 100% chocolate, making it soft and easy to chew. You have no more than 5 grams of sugar in any one of these, but it's always going to have 15, 20 grams of protein packed with the stuff you want it to have. And right now, I'm looking on the website, built.com, 15% off sale for Easter weekend. So if you're hearing this on Sunday night or you're on Monday and it's still going, get to built.com, guys. They're all about taste. They make it delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy, and they do it every single time. So go to built.com. Again, built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. 55 rebounds for the New Orleans Pelicans, 35 rebounds for the Phoenix Suns. Now, I want to say first, because this show, as much as I'm, like many of you, probably thinking toward game 2 already, the playoffs are so fun where each and every game is its own little capsule, and it's like, okay, what are the adjustments going to be in game 2? How's it going to be different? How's it going to be the same? I totally feel you, of course, but I'm going to try to keep this show to just takeaways. Listen on Tuesday for an adjustments episode. What can we expect for game 2? So in the rebounding category, a lot of the problems are obvious. A lot of the solutions, I think, could be a little bit different, but I want to just focus on the problem at hand. That problem is named Jonas Valanciunas, primarily. He had more than half of those 25 offensive rebounds that the Pelicans gobbled up in this game. He had 25 rebounds total, and it's really fascinating. So you would think, okay, he's just around the basket, right? I mean, he's just sitting there. The Suns are just not boxing out. DeAndre Ayton, awful, blah, blah, blah. No, I actually don't think that's what it was at all. And so that's what makes it a little bit deeper, a little bit more difficult to solve, a little bit more of a persistent problem. And you're probably thinking, again, with Valanciunas, why can this guy do this every single time he plays the Suns? And so that's what I want to try to explain a little bit here. So first and foremost, Valanciunas is going to get his on the glass and as a finisher inside because he's a massive dude. I mean, he's 7 foot, 7'1", whatever he is, and, 275, 300 pounds, whatever his weight officially is. You watch this guy, I mean, not to pull the in-person card, but being there at the game, watching him go through warm-ups for several years now, not just tonight, it's something. I mean, he's a beast. So he's going to get that, right? He's going to be good for, I think he's averaged like 3.5 offensive rebounds per game since as long like the past several years against the Suns, not just this one. That's always going to happen. So get that out of the way, build that into your expectation level. The Suns fixing this problem will not mean that Valanciunas has 6 rebounds in the next game. He's going to do that. That's why the Pelicans traded for him. That's why he's deployed the way that he is. But part of the other aspect of the rebounding problem that gets a little bit trickier is how the Suns are playing defense. So one of the great things about DeAndre Ayton as a defender is, especially late in the clock or on your bigger playmaking types like a LeBron James, or in this instance, Brandon Ingram, or obviously a Giannis, you're fine with him switching onto those players because he's mobile enough and he doesn't foul very much in those moments that you can trust him to do that. So if, let's say, Brandon Ingram is running a pick and roll late to get a switch or to just kind of get his rhythm a little bit and get downhill or whatever it is, the Suns are okay to give up that switch, and they're going to have Ayton be out on the perimeter guarding Ingram. Setting aside whatever the result of that is, which in this case, nobody on the Pelicans really scored at a high level efficiently, what that leaves open is that nobody's at the basket anymore because the Suns don't play big, right? They don't. Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges, almost every other player outside of Bridges, you could say, is on the smaller side for what they could be playing. And especially that's the case against the Pelicans, right? Paul is a smaller point guard. Jay Crowder is a smaller 4. Bridges is a pretty normal 3. Booker is a pretty normal 2. They don't have positional size at all these different spots. So when you don't have Ayton at the basket, you're leaving open a lot of holes. You're leaving open any other player on the team, including Valanciunas, to go grab that offensive rebound. And if Ayton has his hands full guarding Valanciunas and JV is already eating against the Suns at a pretty high level for all these years, I can promise you that Devin Booker's not going to get that box out, that Jay Crowder, even a very strong dude, is not getting that box out. So that's kind of where the Suns are. Now, I do think that there's some things naturally, and I'll dig into them a little bit more later on, but there's some things that they can do. I mean, one, they can not switch as much. One, they can, or not switch Ayton as much potentially. One is they can run a little bit more. Tyler Jonas Valanciunas out a little bit. He was very winded at different points in this game. I marked down in the second quarter when he had only played 12 minutes, you could see he was struggling. He's never been a guy that can handle high minutes in his career. So if you make him tired, I think that changes things. But adjustments is Tuesday's show, and I promise I will dig a little bit more into that. And we'll also get to hear from the players and Monty about how to fix it. So that'll all be coming, but the rebounding is a major thing. I mean, it's all offensive too. I mean, the Suns made 54% of their shots, so they were not giving up a lot of defensive rebounds. The Pelicans were not turning missed Suns shots into transition opportunities or any of that stuff. This was purely Valanciunas and a couple of other guys getting on the offensive glass and creating extra possessions. So it's not a problem that's going to go away, but it is a problem that can be fixed, and the game gets a lot less close if so. All right, last thing here that we learned from game 1 of the first round of the Suns playoff run here is the Suns can dictate rotations on both sides, but how that played out is not what I expected. So we'll get into the surprises on the rotation side, on the personnel side here in just one second. First though, guys, today's show brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all the latest stats, sports info, odds, props, and lines, all of it throughout the betting year, throughout the sports calendar. So find all the latest developments, league analysis, news, podcasts, all of it, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for sports wagering info, including live betting, to get in on all of that good action. I am looking here. I sometimes just love to just be off the cuff with it because you can find some, I mean, you just got to check. You just got to stay engaged. I am still liking the Mavericks series price. I know that the Luka stuff is questionable, but they made that first game close. I don't think playing in Utah is any sort of terrifying thing if Luka's able to come back by game 3. If he can't get back for game 3, I'll worry. But until then, I'm not going to panic. Plus 550. I love it. I have some money down there. It was a little bit worse, I think, before game 1. But you can still get in on it. Those are great odds. Head to the website today. That's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the latest trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Last couple of thoughts here. Final takeaway from the Suns' 110-99 victory over the New Orleans Pelicans here in game 1. Make sure to subscribe to the show, guys. Make Locked On Suns your first listen every day as we go through what should be a hell of a playoff run. But first, before we get to any adjustments, which again will be Tuesday's episode, takeaway number 3. The Suns and the Pelicans both are playing players in an interesting way. We learned a lot about the rotations tonight, as you do in any game 1. So I'll start with the Suns side, then I will talk about the Pelicans side, because I know the Suns side a little better, and you guys do too. But there was some interesting stuff with New Orleans as well. Landry Shamet was a DNP-CD. I'm sure if you missed the game, or maybe I don't know what they said on the broadcast, but I asked Monty about this post-game because I was curious. He did confirm before tip-off that Landry was good to go physically because he was questionable heading into the game with left foot, left ankle, lower body on the left leg injury. He left practice the other day and was questionable, but he was good to go. He went through a full warm-up. I watched him do it. He looked fine. So he did not play in this game, and I asked Monty about it. The reason was just purely rotational. He said, talked about it with Shamet pregame, told him he wasn't going to be playing, and that was that. It was more about wanting to have another option defensively against Brandon Ingram was the explanation Monty gave, and that's why he wanted to have Torrey Craig out there. So taking that a step further, what that tells us about Monty's thought heading into this playoff run is that he's only married to 8 guys. So last year, Torrey was a pretty consistent part of that rotation. He was getting minutes even down to the end of the finals, him and Cam Payne. In this case, doesn't appear that way. It feels like Craig is an extra on this, and JaVale McGee is now that sort of 8th guy in addition to Payne and Cam Johnson. Could be Shamet a different day. Could be Shamet in a different series. Could be Aaron Holiday in a different series. I definitely think it will at times be Bismack Biyombo if the Suns want to go with 2 bigs, or if they want to have another option on a Giannis type or a player like him, even a Draymond Green. I don't know. We'll see, but I think Biyombo will be that. I think Craig will be that. I think Shamet will be that. I could even see Aaron Holiday being that 9th guy. But Monty's not going to be playing 10 or 11 guys in these playoffs. On the other hand, the Pelicans did play 10 guys. Willie Green did play 10 guys. What we saw very quickly is that the Suns are going to attack matchups in every time that they can, in different forms. So in the first quarter, you saw that happening with TJ McCollum a lot. They were getting switches so that Booker was being guarded by McCollum, although Booker in the original setup, he started being guarded by Brandon Ingram. They would get these switches so that Booker could post up McCollum or shoot over the top of him, etc. They tried to run some offense, just simple stuff from Mikal Bridges, who he was being primarily guarded by McCollum, which is sort of wild, but the Suns don't leave you a lot of places to hide, so I guess I get that. And all of those things were working. Second quarter, it was more Jackson Hayes. And Hayes is somebody that I could see not playing as soon as game 2. We'll talk about that in the Tuesday show on these adjustments, but the Suns went at him. They made him guard in space. They made him handle switching and recovering and all this different stuff that he's not really very well equipped to do, because the Suns can use Jay Crowder, they can use Cam Johnson, in order to make you do that, whereas Hayes is really a center. I mean, he is. Aside from that, some interesting stuff matchup-wise. McHale guarded McCollum, and Crowder guarded Ingram, which is what I predicted when I did a crossover preview show with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. I thought that would happen. The Suns are so focused on having Bridges at a point of attack defender, if at all possible, and he did his job. McCollum did not have a great night. The Pelicans offense didn't really get into a rhythm at all. McCollum wasn't able to take many off-the-bounce jumpers. All that stuff was working. But from there, things got a little bit more interesting. The Pelicans were able to play Devontae Graham, and the Suns didn't really punish it, although the Pelicans didn't really use Devontae Graham. But interesting nevertheless, because he was a shell of himself in that Clippers game. He only played 4 minutes and really didn't have an impact. And then Trey Murphy continues to play a whole ton. Larry Nance, not so much. I think he is the obvious guy to take up some minutes if Hayes doesn't play, but he didn't really impress me. I don't think the Pelicans used him to take advantage of JaVale McGee, to take advantage of DeAndre Ayton maybe not being so comfortable having to guard the pick and pop or different things like that. I think Nance can do that more. He didn't really do it in this game. And then Murphy, I think, is the obvious match, right? He can be out there and guard Mikal Bridges, guard Jay Crowder, guard Devin Booker even, and just that versatility. The Suns are going to dictate who plays in this series. We saw that tonight. No Hayes. That's not going to be sustainable. Don't think Devontae Graham is going to be very sustainable. I think even Valanciunas, if he's not getting 25 rebounds, which ideally that doesn't happen again, he becomes a little bit less playable. I think that you're going to see a lineup that looks a lot like what the Clippers brought out of New Orleans in that play-in game. So Herb Jones, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Larry Nance, and Brandon Ingram. That's probably going to be their closing lineup as soon as game 2, once things settle in a little bit. That's it, though, guys. 3 takeaways for you late here at night on Sunday. You can see it in my hair, in my button-up shirt that I'm still wearing. We're all going to be up late enjoying this stuff. I appreciate each and every one of you for listening and watching. Hit subscribe. I'll be here every single day, every single week as we get our way through it. All right. Go make Locked On NBA your second listen, guys, to get caught up on the other series happening around the NBA, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.